golden rules in storytelling is less is more, and that phrase is even more applicable to the horror genre, especially when it comes to sci-fi horror. Even if a movie creature is well designed and intimidating, it can lose its mystique completely if it's overexposed. The xenomorph in Alien and the titular character in Predator terrified an entire generation, despite the fact that both characters were only on screen for a matter of minutes. Hell, the monsters from Bird Box freaked out moviegoers even though they're never seen at any point. This proves that knowing when to show the big bad beastie is much more important than how often it's shown. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are terrifying horror movie monsters with very little screen time. The Creature by the Roadside, Extro. Low-budget British horror Extro opens with a father, Sam, abducted by an unknown light in the sky. 3 years later, the light returns and plants a seed in the woods, and that seed quickly sprouts into a creature made from the DNA of Sam and an alien. Okay, this is a weird film, by the way. Even though this is meant to be a gripping scene, the cheap, rubbery costume of the monster undercuts the tension. After seeing this laughable outfit, viewers shouldn't have high hopes for what's to come. Having said that, there's one jump scare that catches many first-time watchers off guard. While the extraterrestrial crawls around the forest, the camera cuts to a couple driving on a countryside road. As they listen to tranquil music on the radio, it's easy to momentarily forget about the little critter. With no warning, the camera cuts to the alien on the roadside, just before it collides with the vehicle. To ensure viewers jump out of their skin, the shot is accompanied by a deafening synthesized sound. Okay, yes, so the creature doesn't look great, but the way it's revealed here is flawless. Mrs. Pickman in The Mouth of Madness. In The Mouth of Madness follows private investigator John Trent, who's tasked with locating horror author Sutter Kane. At first, Trent believes Kane's disappearance is a publicity stunt to promote his latest book, but Trent isn't sure what to believe when he stumbles upon Hobbs End, a supposedly fictional town in Kane's work. While there, Trent stays at an inn run by a sweet old lady called Mrs. Pickman. After Trent runs into the creepy locals, Mrs. Pickman seems like the only normal person in town. That is, until it's later revealed that the old bat is the most terrifying of the lot. During one scene, the camera cuts to Pickman's feet, revealing her naked, whimpering husband is handcuffed to her ankle. As chilling as this shot is, it's just the appetizer for what's to come. When Trent meets Pickman again, she's transformed into a tentacled monster, and after watching the eldritch creature hack up her husband with a hatchet, Trent gets the hell out of there as soon as possible. Although there are many eerie shots in The Mouth of Madness, Mrs. Pickman's transformation is one of the best, or more accurately, one of the worst. The Seven-Eyed Ram, Altered States. Ken Russell's psychedelic thriller follows psychologist Edward Jessup, who uses hallucinatory drugs and sensory deprivation to reach a higher state of mind. Altered States is a real head-scratcher since it deals with atavism, transmutation, incorporeal evolution, layers of consciousness, and other scientific gobbledygook, making the kaleidoscopic imagery such a blur that it can be hard for viewers to comprehend what they're watching. However, there's one shot guaranteed to be ingrained in viewers' minds. During one of Jessup's trippy visions, he sees a swirl of Christian images, including a Bible, a burning cross, and the Shroud of Turin. These moments are constantly interrupted by a blink-and-you'll-miss-it image of a furry creature with multiple eyes and horns. As the sequence ends, this creature is revealed to be a crucified man with the head of a seven-eyed ram. Before any explanation is given to what this entity is, it disappears, never to be mentioned again. Though the seven-eyed ram shows up for less than 20 seconds, it's the most iconic shot and the biggest WTF moment of the whole movie. Katahdin Prophecy. John Frankenheimer's creature feature revolves around a monstrous bear, Katahdin, who goes on a killing spree after being infected with toxic waste. In a nutshell, Prophecy isn't very good. It's slow-paced, badly acted, and contains unintentionally hilarious sequences that diminish potential scares. With that said, it's hard to fault the design of the mutant grizzly, with Katahdin's melted face and permanently pained expression sure to make viewers feel uneasy. Also, the big bad bear lets out a haunting roar every time it draws near, which will leave many curling their toes. To really sell how colossal this creature is, Katahdin was portrayed by 7'2" stuntman Kevin Peter Hall, best known for playing the titular beast in Predator. By using low camera angles, this monstrosity appears almost twice that size. Even though this towering mutant is a man in a costume, the filmmakers go the extra mile to make it look legit, with the bear rarely seen for more than a second and often obscured by trees and foliage. Katahdin is so genuinely terrifying, it's a pity it didn't appear in a better movie. Clover, Cloverfield. Few films were shrouded in as much secrecy as Matt Reeves' Cloverfield. Heck, the trailer didn't even mention the movie's title. The promotional material was smart enough to keep the picture's city-destroying monster hidden, piquing moviegoers' curiosity even more. And by the time Cloverfield was released, horror fans were giddy with excitement to catch a glimpse of the beast nicknamed Clover by fans. However, for the most part, the creature remains obscured. The outline of Clover is seen on multiple occasions, but rarely a clear shot. Each time Clover looks like it's about to make its grand reveal, the alien moves in another direction or the camera cuts away. In fact, we don't get a vivid shot of the behemoth until the halfway point, and it's only when the military begins blasting at Clover that the camera finally captures a shot of it. Its design is so unique, it's difficult to register what we've just seen, which makes Clover even scarier. It's still tricky to explain what the heck this thing looks like even after all these years. Though the extraterrestrial is seen more clearly during Cloverfield's climax, its first appearance leaves the biggest impression: the Death Angels, A Quiet Place. Few sci-fi thrillers over the last decade have been as atmospheric as John Krasinski's A Quiet Place. After the world is invaded by aliens with hypersensitive hearing called Death Angels, the survivors are forced to live in silence, and as the prologue proves, anyone who makes the slightest sound will suffer death almost immediately. Thanks to this original premise, the snap of a twig or the closing of a door is likely to leave anyone's hair standing on end. As such, viewers would be scared of the Death Angels even if they had a generic design. Nevertheless, the special effects supervisor went all out to make the echolocating creatures as scary as possible. Every aspect of the Death Angels' physiology, including their sleek, armoured exterior, hook-like arms, serrated teeth, and disconnecting skull, is creepy as hell. On top of that, the way they incessantly click to detect their prey is sure to give anyone goosebumps. After being built up so brilliantly over A Quiet Place's first 80 minutes, the reveal of the Death Angels could have been anticlimactic. Fortunately, the tension during the final confrontation is through the roof, due to the monster's phenomenal design. The Gremlin, The Twilight Zone, the movie. The Twilight Zone, the movie, concludes with a remake of the classic episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. In this segment, airline passenger Valentine is doing his best to overcome his fear of flying. However, his panic goes on overdrive when he spots a gremlin on the wing of the plane. As the malicious trickster begins ripping out machinery and tossing it into the engine, Valentine realizes he has to do something before the plane crashes. Though Valentine can barely see the gremlin due to the heavy rain, he's spooked enough to close the window shutter. While trying to sleep, he suddenly hears a tapping by his window. After curiosity gets the better of him, Valentine opens the shutter, giving him his first real look at the gremlin. Though the critter in the original TV series looked pretty goofy, this version is the stuff of nightmares. With his skeletal face, predator-like hair, gaunt physique, and toothy smile, it's no surprise Valentine has an instant meltdown when he sees it. Though audiences only catch glimpses of the gremlin throughout this sequence, it's enough to put viewers off flying for quite some time. The Sarah creature, The Void. In Canadian body horror The Void, doctors at an understaffed hospital are preparing to deliver a baby when the facility is suddenly surrounded by a mysterious cult, whose presence seemingly drives one nurse insane before turning her into a tentacled monster. The group eventually learned these incidents were caused by one of the senior doctors, Richard Powell, who made a pact with an interdimensional entity to resurrect his daughter Sarah. But when Sarah is revived, she has no resemblance to what she once was, and instead of coming back as the innocent little girl that Powell knew, Sarah returns as a zombified heap of necrotic flesh. Watching this festering and bloated mass vomit tentacles onto its victims is a type of nightmare fuel that viewers probably didn't know existed. What makes the Sarah creature more disturbing is the fact that she's a victim. She didn't ask to be reborn, but now finds herself trapped inside the most grotesque body imaginable, and the way she constantly moans and squeals indicates she's in immense pain and terrified beyond measure. Though The Void has plenty of ghoulish imagery, it's the Sarah creature that will cause the most sleepless nights. The Aliens, Fire in the Sky. Fire in the Sky centers around a group of loggers who are looking for their friend, Travis, after he's abducted by a flying saucer. 5 days later, Travis returns to Earth with little memory of what happened to him. Although Fire in the Sky plays out like a sci-fi mystery for the most part, the climax feels like a walking nightmare. Finally remembering what happened during the abduction, Travis relives the moment his alien captors performed experiments on him. At a glance, the aliens' design seems somewhat anticlimactic since they have the bulbous head and beady eyes often depicted in science fiction. However, it's not the extraterrestrials' look that makes them frightening, but how clinical they behave during the procedure. The aliens calmly and methodically cut off Travis's air supply, attach surgical tools to his eye, and stuff goo in his mouth, unfazed by his screams of terror and pain. While Travis looks on in horror as a surgical needle gradually works its way towards his eyeball, his abductors refuse to show the slightest sign of empathy. The extraterrestrials don't show up until the 11th hour, but it's easy to see how this scene traumatized pretty much everybody back in the 90s.
The Jackal, 13 Ghosts. This 2001 remake opens with Arthur's family moving into the mansion of a recently deceased relative, only to learn that it's haunted by, you guessed it, 13 ghosts. This paranormal B-movie has all the hallmarks of a shoddy horror flick: clunky dialogue, a convoluted storyline, idiotic characters, and choppy editing. Most importantly though, the ghosts aren't really that scary, save that is for one. Arthur's assistant, Dennis, mentions the Jackal is the most dangerous spirit, referring to him as the Charlie Manson of ghosts. And as soon as you see this phantom, you understand why. Because he's wearing a straitjacket and a metal cage around his head, you know that this guy is deranged beyond measure. With his razor-sharp fingernails, this sinister spook makes short work of anyone foolish enough to go near him. To highlight his further insanity, psychotic screaming and maniacal laughter can be heard any time he's near. As such, the Jackal leaves viewers terrified even before you see him. Now, if you haven't seen 13 Ghosts in a while, it's likely you don't recall much about the other dozen spectres, but it is impossible to forget the Jackal despite his limited screen time. The Entity. The Entity. The Entity centers around a mother, Carla, who finds herself being physically and sexually assaulted by an invisible force. Even though you half expect the Entity to take on a physical form at some point, it remains invisible from start to finish. This was a bold but rather wise decision, since the Entity's power is left to the viewer's imagination, which makes the insidious incubus much more frightening. Because Carla can't see her tormentor, she's completely at its mercy, making her feel utterly helpless. And watching this invisible force thrash Carla's house and hurl her across the room with such animalistic ferocity will give anyone goosebumps. What makes these supernatural encounters more petrifying though is the fact that they're accompanied with Charles Bernstein's soundtrack, Relentless Attack. Every time you hear this blaring ballad, you know that Carla is in for a world of hurt. However, it's Barbara Hershey's performance as Carla that keeps us all enthralled. The way she contorts her body as she's being tossed to the ground or smashed into walls makes it hard to believe that she's acting at all. Thanks to the amazing music, performances, and filmmaking, the Entity scared the hell out of viewers despite never physically appearing. Mother Marcos. Suspiria. In 2018's version of Suspiria, the naturally gifted Susie joins Marcos Dance Academy in Berlin, hoping to become a world-class dancer. However, Susie is seemingly unaware that the school is run by witches, who intend to use the students to amplify their power. Since the academy's founder, Mother Helen, has built up as evil incarnate, viewers are eager to see Susie have a confrontation with her. And because this remake clocks in at a bum-numbing 152 minutes, and with the mother only appearing at the very end, you might be worried that she won't live up to expectations. But on the contrary, the mother makes for an unforgettable impression, since she is, without shred of exaggeration, one of the most physically repulsive characters ever put to screen. Every crevasse of her body is covered in pus, tumors, warts, and seeping fluids. As hard as it is to believe, that's not the most disgusting thing about her. Her torso is layered with baby limbs, implying that she's consumed newborns to prolong her life. The way these extra appendages jiggle when the mother lumbers around is bound to turn your stomach. The Witch. The Witch, a New England folktale. Like the best horrors, The Witch, a New England folktale focuses on the unseen. Although the titular villain rarely appears, her presence can be felt throughout Robert Eggers' Jacobean drama. When we see the family dog she gored, it is but a taste of the evil that harbours within her. Although we don't see the malevolent witch murder William's infant son, his death leaves every scene that follows drenched in tension. Even when we see the sorceress, very little is revealed about her. When William's other son Caleb discovers enters her hovel, she takes the form of a beautiful woman in order to entice him. As he approaches her, the enchantress grabs Caleb with a decrepit hand before the screen then cuts to black. While William's twins are in the stable, they see the witch slurping milk from the cow's udders. As they approach her, she turns around, revealing her withered demeanor, while letting out a maniacal cackle. Although we don't see much else of our antagonist, we do not need to. The witch appears for less than a minute, but leaves an impression that is guaranteed to last a lifetime. The Smile Demon. Smile. In Smile, Dr. Rose Cutter encounters a woman called Laura who is being cursed by a smiling shapeshifter. Before she has a chance to elaborate, Laura kills herself. When Rose discovers the Smile Demon has cursed her, she worries that she will suffer the same fate. Now, the idea of a monster driving somebody mad by grinning might not sound that compelling, but you can't help but feel unsettled watching Rose being bombarded by leering faces everywhere she goes. Upon a first viewing, you might wonder if the Smile Demon will show its true form, and to be honest, part of you probably doesn't want to see what it really looks like. A grand reveal could rob the demon of its mystique, especially if it doesn't look scary or convincing. Fortunately, the demonic creature looks suitably piss-your-pants terrifying. In the climax, the demon shreds its outer shell, revealing its natural form, a skinless giant corpse with multiple rows of malformed teeth. Not only is this a chilling design, the rows of teeth are a nice touch, since each jaw symbolizes each of the demon's victims. We only see the demon's true self for a few seconds, but it's sure to give viewers a couple of sleepless nights. The Ram Man. Lamb. In this Icelandic folk tale, Maria and Ingvar discover that one of their sheep has given birth to a lamb-human hybrid. Desperate for children, the couple adopt this newborn as their own, naming her Ada. While caring for their daughter, Maria and Ingvar suffer several hardships. Ingvar's brother sees the child as an abomination and tries to kill her, and when Ada is kidnapped by her mother, Maria is forced to slaughter the ewe. While all of this is going on, viewers can't help but wonder the true origins of this wee sheep. The circumstances of how Ada came to be are so cryptic, you safely assume that it will just be left unexplained. As such, it totally throws you off when Ada's biological father, a ram man, appears out of nowhere and shoots Ingvar with a rifle. While viewers are trying to process what just happened, the grunting beast takes its offspring by the hand and wanders off into the wilderness. What the hell is he? Is he the devil himself, nature incarnate? Does he represent karma since Maria killed Ada's mother? Or is he just some weird ram man? His appearance may be short-lived, but he packs a rather palpable punch. The Mutant Bear. Annihilation. After watching Annihilation, viewers are left with more questions than answers. What did that ending mean? What happened to Natalie Portman's character? And more importantly, how am I expected to sleep after that bear scene? In this cosmic mystery drama, 4 scientists, Lena, Anya, Josie, and Cass, enter a terrain called the Shimmer, which causes living species to merge with any organism nearby. And one night, a mutated grizzly attacks the quartet, killing Cass in the process. When the bear follows the remaining 3 scientists into a cabin, we get our first proper glimpse of the carnivorous chimera. Although the bear's body seems relatively normal, the skin on its head has eroded away, revealing a human-like skull with teeth embedded into its own. It's not the bear's abnormal face that haunts us though, but its voice. Because the abomination came into contact with Cass, it absorbed her DNA, and due to this, we hear Cass's dying screams every time the creature opens its mouth. Even though the concept of a skeletal bear is rather freaky, hearing one cry out, "Help me," in a human voice, well, that is pure nightmare fuel. The Man with the Fire in His Face. Insidious. Jump scares get a bad rep, since they're rather hard to pull off without coming across as forced, but if this scare tactic is executed right, it can be the most memorable part of a movie. Few features demonstrate this better than Insidious. In the scene in question, parents Josh and Renee have become concerned for their son Dalton, who's fallen into a coma. While Josh speaks to his mother about Dalton's condition, she mentions a nightmare that she had of a red-faced demon called the Man with the Fire in His Face. As she looks up, she sees the very same demonic figure snarling behind Josh. Because the scene takes place in midday in a brightly lit room, you're not expecting a jump scare, making the shot even more effective. Even though most of the entity's face is obscured by Josh's head, this shot is ingrained in viewers' memory banks forever. Although we see more of the devilish creature later, his first appearance is more impactful since it's completely out of the blue. Despite the fact that there isn't a single clear shot of the Man with the Fire in His Face, it hasn't stopped him from becoming a horror icon.
Watcher in the Water, The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. Lord of the Rings saga is replete with all sorts of creatures that don't get big big screen time in the mainline entries. I mean, even the giant freaking wizard-slaying Balrog doesn't get more than a handful of appearances across 2 of the 3 movies, with most of the monsters in Middle-earth, from Shelob to the Mouth of Sauron, having one big moment before fading into obscurity amongst the mammoth set pieces. One such monster that made quite the splash for all of a scene is the Watcher in the Water, an entity dwelling in the dark body of a lake before the doors of Durin leading to Moria. Disturbed by stones being thrown into its depths, director Peter Jackson utilizes POV shots and a burgeoning soundtrack to let us know that all is not as it seems underneath the surface before busting out of massive tentacles that latch onto Frodo. From here, the Watcher seems something like Tolkien's take on a kraken, only more mean-looking, pulling itself onto land with such force that it crumbles the doors of Durin, but with a slap of its noodly limbs. He might be a little CGI around the edges, but this ancient evil is enough to make anyone shiver in their mithril shirt. The Wendigo, Pet Sematary 2019. Where most every other entry on this list is a positive portrayal of an excellent, memorable monster, there's got to be one exception to the rule, and it's the Pet Sematary remake of 2019 that has a monster that appears for literally seconds when it should have been a far larger part of the narrative. Where the novel focuses on a Wendigo as the supernatural force bringing both animals and people back from the dead in the titular Pet Sematary, in which buried bodies can be resurrected for a terrible price, neither the original movie nor its 2019 counterpart play into this creature's powers particularly attentively. The 2019 movie does its best by showing but one glimpse of a sketch in a notepad, but the subsequent shadowy creature watching through the trees when Louis buries his daughter Ellie is all that we get to actually see of it. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment stipulated by some eerie noises and feels very far too easily missed for something that's such an integral part of the narrative. Considering how much creepy fun the film could have had with a skeletal deer monster inhabiting the edges of the clearing, this feels like a little bit of a cop-out. Carnictus King Kong. Whilst most monsters with only a small chunk of screen time have us desperately hoping for another glimpse of what original fascinating creations movie magic has conjured up, the Carnictus of King Kong have entirely the opposite effect through their brilliantly disgusting design work. Appearing in the infamous insect pit scene, one that was lost from the original movie but reimagined by Peter Jackson for his 2005 remake, the Carnictus are the undulating, wormy, flaccid dick-looking monstrosities that slowly envelop poor Sailor Lumpy limb by limb as he attempts to escape with his life. Spoiler if you couldn't tell from the clip, he doesn't manage it. Death by sentient disembodied dong really is the most awful way to go. The Carnicts are not pretty, they're not smart, and they're not nice. Essentially a stomach with a toothy maw for a face that consumes endlessly among its giant insect pals. Of course, the Wetarexes, or the Arachnoclaws, or the Deplectors all get a shout out for their one scene to shine too, but by God, it's an act of mercy they don't have more screen time. Hydra and the children of Hydra's teeth, Jason and the Argonauts. Honestly, this whole entry is just going to be a love letter to Ray Harryhausen's special effects work, since the man made Dynamation a bona fide work of art over his years sculpting monsters for painstaking stop-motion sequences. It would be remiss not to nod to his one-scene specials that were Medusa and the Kraken in Clash of the Titans, or the Naga and the Rock of the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Really, but Jason and the Argonauts' sublime creations are the ones that really take the fleece on this one. The Bronze Guardian Talos is first to have his one scene and done, a behemoth statue that defends Crete from those that would steal its treasure. And whilst the towering giant is impressive, he's all but blown out of the water by later in the film when we meet the many-headed Hydra. Jason is forced into a choreographed fight with a serpentine creature, attempting to slay it with a sword. Whilst he does eventually win their dance, the teeth of the Hydra are taken and strewn across the ground to create the Children of the Hydra's Teeth, a band of skeletons animated over a period of 4 months to fight against Jason and his gang in one final showdown. Both scenes are breathtakingly impressive and have an eerie quality of uncanniness about them from the meticulous stop-motion work which makes them all the more spooky. If any one man has contributed incomprehensibly to movie monsters that deserve endless celebration, it has to be Harryhausen. The Rancor, Return of the Jedi. If the previous entry didn't convince you that practical monsters are the best of the bunch, the Return of the Jedi's Rancor definitely will. Appearing for what feels like nothing more than an extended cameo underneath Jabba's chambers, the Rancor makes a meal of one unfortunate guard before setting his sights on Luke Skywalker, who's also being dropped into his death pit. What makes the Rancor so great as a monster largely comes from its initial sinister reveal, appearing from behind a metal door that looks like a giant toothy mouth with only a glimmer of its eyes and fangs visible in the darkness. Stepping claws first into the light, the sickly crunch of the Gamorrean beforehand only belies how powerful this hulking behemoth is, making Luke's defeat at the thing even more of a cause for celebration when he bests it with his own mechanical trappings. Jabba's Rancor only gets a few brief minutes in the spotlight, but it's one of the most beloved and revered monsters monsters populating the Star Wars universe. If this beastie didn't stick with you as a kid, you're watching the wrong movies. Angel of Death, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Guillermo del Toro's taste for the weird feels almost unquenchable, with his abstract creations making for some of the most uncomfortable and impressionable characters in film history. The Angel of Death from Hellboy 2 fits that mold perfectly, both an incredibly strange figure, but instantly compelling in its presentation, slotting into the Hellboy canon as easily as a giant red demon and his humanoid fish pal have from the very beginning. The Angel of Death is a del Toro creation that primarily toys with the vision of its creepy effects, having its eyes grow from the wings coming out of its back and a hard chitin plate in the place of having eye sockets and a forehead. Skeletal in its figure, whilst having a flair for the dramatic and enjoying a particularly creepy cadence, the Angel of Death is a wonderful example of the magic that Del Toro and Doug Jones make when they get together. The Shape of Water and Crimson Peak, another two examples the pair have under their weird and wonderful belts. Stan Lee's head, It Chapter 2. There's no way this can be mentioned without special homage paid to The Thing, the founding place of all things spider monster, crafted from poor Norris's head in John Carpenter's 1982 movie. The Norris Thing head is worthy of an entry all of its own, of course, alongside every other unique, twisted iteration of the alien thing that it takes on during its time terrorizing a remote Antarctic research base. But let's celebrate spider heads the world over with a more recent addition to that one-shot list of creepy crawly noggins. After all, the assimilated monster might have been the first instance of a decapitated human head running around on 8 arachnic glades, but it certainly wasn't the last. Paying special reference to the seminal classic, director Andy Muschietti transforms Stanley Urie's lonesome head into another skittering horror show during It Chapter 2's runtime, especially effective both for its excitable throwback as well as the deviation from Stephen King's source material. What was supposed to be a stationary head in a fridge turns into a child's rampaging bonce roaming free in one of the most sickly shapes that it takes on across the movies. Both a welcome surprise and a terrifying vision in one gruesome blow. The Trench, Aquaman. Arguably the best part of the movie for its dark tone and incredible execution, this moment just proves what a forced director and horror aficionado James Wan is in the industry when he's allowed to do his thing. Of course, the trench scene of Aquaman is one of the most memorable points, depicting Arthur and Mera besieged by a terrifying, spiny group of monsters from the deepest part of the ocean. I'll be honest, there's one single shot that gives a vague look at these fishy fiends early on, but really, we don't actually see them in full until their big moment, so they're coming on the list all the same. Humanoid deep-sea fish that have regressed from Atlanteans, the trench move like a giant ant farm as they pulsate together under the waves, hunting down any and all that would venture into their territory above the resting place of a powerful trident. Embodying everything creepy about the deepest and darkest parts of our oceans, the trench are suitably scary as the monsters of this universe, as well as remarkably destructive, providing a real threat in a comic book movie that can often feel as if its superpowered inhabitants are invulnerable. The Pale Man, Pan's Labyrinth. Yet another movie that doesn't let up on original monsters with ever dastardly creation thrown up on screen, Pan's Labyrinth is a treasure trove of Guillermo del Toro's most intricate and interesting beasts that need no more than a swift feature to solidify them into horror history canon. Whilst the faun and his fairies are some of the most eerily enchanting that crop up throughout the narrative, it's the monsters that drop one-time only appearances during Ophelia's tasks that remain the most terrifying. The giant toad is a nice chunk of weirdness, but it's again Doug Jones's The Pale Man that has long been revered as one of the best original monster creations that only ever appears in a single scene. And of course, one of the most downright scary of them all. Emaciated, skeletal, and pale, as the name suggests. Really, the creature has no eye sockets, but rather little holes in its palms that he pops his eyeballs into, hunting Ophelia with splayed fingers in a sick rendition of reindeer antlers across his face. Feasting on fairies and children alike, the Pale Man is evil incarnate, and his appearance is only strengthened by how little time we actually spend with him. 5 minutes. 5 minutes too many.
Mutated Rat, Rampage. For a film that prides itself on giant mutated creatures, that we only got to see a handful of the things throughout Rampage's runtime is a true crime. Spending most of its budget on a giant, mostly benevolent gorilla, an evil crocodile, and a nasty flying wolf who ingested a genetic pathogen that causes them to exponentially grow in size, strength, and aggression, the film is a nice recreation of the video game of the same name for the most part, as the monsters attempt to survive against military forces. The causes of this genetic nightmare is shown in the opening scenes, where a space station is destroyed by a test subject and spreads debris across the US. The test subject itself, however, is both itself a neat, underused monster and a little Easter egg reference to the game's added fourth character, Larry the Rat. Larry appears in the movie briefly to set off the catastrophic chain of events and looks crazed as hell whilst he's doing it. We see him for one scene of destruction where he's lit exclusively in flames, and they suit him particularly well. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Ghostbusters. A true icon of the 1980s movies, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man has long since ingrained himself into our hearts and into our bank accounts too, making up a disproportionate amount of merchandise to cash in on the Squidgy menace since his debut in '84. Of course, the Stay Puft mascot comes from Ghostbusters, where supernatural activity is taking over New York and requires the proton energy interference of a group of those who bust ghosts. By the end of the movie, the team of 4 are faced with an interdimensional threat that will take on the form of whatever they so choose, with Ray selecting the Marshmallow brand in an attempt to select something that couldn't possibly destroy them. That's the thing with ghosts though, they don't play fair. Stay Puft is blown up to gigantic proportions, wrecking the city like a pillowy Godzilla and roaring in the face of those who would defy the creature's reign of terror. He's destroyed in the end by crossing the proton streams and thankfully hasn't been seen again since, with the 2016 remake committing their brand of Stay Puft to a ghostly balloon instead. And more recently, Ghostbusters Afterlife giving us the teeny weeny cute versions of Stay Puft instead. Demon Lovely Molly. Lovely Molly is one of those films that's like Marmite. You either love it or you hate its tentative slow pace and violent outbursts. Not quite keen on telling the audience any information that could be useful to discerning its plot, Lovely Molly is happy to regale an audience with gross visuals and a loose story of a possessed young woman. This would be the titular Molly, a newlywed and recovering heroin addict that has returned to her childhood home with her new husband, only the past isn't quite as done with her as she thinks. There's strange shrines, lots of death, and a disorientating scene where Molly wanders out naked in the night and into the arms of some sort of creature. A man wearing the head of what appears to be a horse. It's unclear whether this is an all-too-human monster in a mask or one from hell, with 2 glowing eyes in the darkness, just about all that's visible aside from his distorted head. This one peep of a monster is all we need to solidify the supernatural presence of Lovely Molly, and is perfectly scarce otherwise. Colin the Janitor, Silent Hill. Silent Hill's legacy as a video game movie that didn't quite live up to the potential of its source material was probably solidified by its choice to throw in game monsters that bear no relevance to the movie world. Where the nurses represented the second video game's protagonist's sexual anxiety, the movie threw them in for appearance alone, resulting in some unhappy fans despite seeing their favourite gaming motifs on the big screen. Still, Silent Hill still offered up some original monster mayhem outside of your sexy, horrifying hospital staff and the ever-imposing Pyramid Head, with the utterly rank Colin the Janitor. Appearing for one brief sequence where his corpse comes to life when Silent Hill shifts into its otherworldly domain, he crawls along the floor to Rose whilst lashing his tongue wildly, bound by barbed wire for his molestering behaviour in life and trapped in Silent Hill for his crimes. Dilophosaurus, Jurassic Park. Of all the deaths in Jurassic Park, the Dilophosaurus definitely offers up the most gnarly one. Whilst it's one thing being crushed by a Tyrannosaurus Rex or hunted down by a pack of Velociraptors, it's entirely another to have venom spat in your face before you're torn apart in the confines of a claustrophobic car interior. Yikes. Poor Dennis Nedry rings rather hollow though, since the whole reason the computer programmer gets himself into this mess in the first place is by trying to portray the titular park, by stealing dinosaur embryos to sell to a rival company. Stumbling around in a storm after losing his way to the docks, Nedry is faced with the frilled menace after antagonizing the creature with a stick and threatening to run the dinosaur over. A face full of goopy venom later, and he's not so smart after all. There's a clear reason Jurassic Park won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, so it's best to just be thankful that we didn't get to see his actual demise realized in full actuality on screen too. One little taste of the Dilophosaurus was more than enough. Mother Longlegs, Kong Skull Island. If there's one thing that's worse than just plain old spiders, it's finding spiders in places they shouldn't be. That's the name of the game when it comes to Kong Skull Island, which seems intent on traumatizing audiences in the most dramatic way possible by throwing in a freaking building-sized bug on the land of gigantic monsters. Skull crawlers, Maya squid, and skirt buffalo, as well as big old Kong himself, Skull Island could have happily kept some secrets on what insects lurk in its strange forests. Instead, we were shown what's known as Mother Longlegs in all her spindly glory. Surely a loving homage to the bug pit of the original movie, as well as a knowing wink to the infamous cannibal cannibal Holocaust scene, director Jordan Vogt-Roberts crafts a spider with bamboo limbs that spears through the face of an unlucky soldier, before raining down fleshy hell out of its torso and threatening the rest with its pincers. Though it's taken down fairly easily in the end, it's a standout scene for just how expertly Vogt-Roberts pulls it from nowhere, turning a forest stroll into a hellish nightmare with the shift of a single stalk. Brundlefly, the Fly. The Fly is David Cronenberg's disgusting ode to all things sticky and gross, merging Jeff Goldblum's DNA with that of a housefly as he suffers from a unique incident while testing teleporting technology. As the film goes on, Seth Brundle devolves further and further into a man-monster, until he quite literally sheds his skin to become the Brundlefly, a state he wants to combine with his girlfriend Ronnie and their unborn child inside her. The Brundlefly himself, the little scamp, only appears for one scene by rule of the narrative. Brundle's metamorphosis has continued to get more extreme throughout the movie, and whilst this seems to be his final form, it ends with the Brundlefly conjoining himself with a metal door by accident. Ronnie manages to escape her confinement for the bloody scrambling, and Brundle fuses himself with nothing inside his telepod, making for one more monster that only appears for a scene too. Behemoth, the Mist. Chock full of invented monsters, The Mist unleashes a whole horde of mysterious creatures upon our protagonists as they attempt to escape a strange, all-encompassing weather phenomenon. When David and his son head to a supermarket to go shopping, they don't realize it's the last time their lives will resemble any sense of normalcy. The pair become trapped inside with a host of other shoppers as the thick white mist rolls in, bringing with it alien-looking monsters that are not of this earth. There's plenty that could make the cut for this entry, since we see all sorts of weird and wonderful beasties as each set piece unfolds in the movie, but by far the most memorable and interesting lies in the Behemoth. True to its name, it's the first monster to really give a sense of scale to the monsters of the Mist, appearing almost at the end of the movie to tower over David and his friends in their car as they drive under its gigantic form. Covered in tentacles, boasting 6 double-jointed legs, and not giving a single fuck about anything on the floor beneath it, it truly is an epic monster that makes all the better of an impression from its short-lived appearance. Meg Mucklebone's Legend. Legend is a movie that sounds all sunshine and smiles on the surface, with a flock of unicorns and a wholesome fairy tale comprising the bulk of the fantastical adventure, with Tom Cruise front and center. But when you go poking about into what's actually going on, you see there's a force of evil attempting to turn the world into eternal state of night, you find horses sucked into swamps, and devilish Tim Curry as the antagonist, and none other than Ridley Scott orchestrating the whole terrifying ordeal from the director's seat. Right, of course. And during this feverish dark fantasy tale, we meet Meg Mucklebones, a swamp witch comprised entirely of practical effects, whose rubbery green appearance is one sure to stick with you long after watching. Screeching as she converses with Cruiser's Jack, she's killed quite literally with his kindness as he showers her with compliments to distract her from her sudden decapitation. Watching this title as a child was a one-way ticket to sleepless nights thanks to Meg, but she's an awesome example of mind-blowing effects working all the same.